why non-organic grains are possibly the greatest threat to human health. Dr. Pompa, this new, under the radar thing that no one's talking about. We're talking about gluten, all these other things, but there's something new that's been flying under the radar that can possibly be the cause of Alzheimer's, diabetes. We're putting it on gluten, we're putting it even on GMO, which we're going to talk about. But what is that, Dr. Pompa?
Yeah, it's a chemical called glyphosate.
And I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's the active ingredient in Roundup. So, that Roundup that you spray on your weeds out on your driveway, well, they're spraying it in massive amounts on our food supply. Now look, in the past, they would utilize it on the plant before it even grew, right? And as weeds would pop up, they would spray it. And yes, some of it absolutely would make its way into the food.
But not that huge of a threat.
Well, some would argue maybe, but there's a much greater threat today, for sure. And if the studies are correct, which I believe they are, I think I cited at least 17 different sites here in this research article that goes with this video, this in fact is, I believe, the greatest threat to human health. Look, everyone's talking about gluten. Everybody knows gluten. Years ago when we would talk about gluten, people would, raise an eyebrow. Well, this is where we're at. This is way a bigger problem to human health than gluten would ever be or can be. So this is why autoimmune, holes in people's guts, which driving autoimmune, diabetes, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these conditions that are really epidemic right now, autism, just simple memory loss, depression, I can go on and on. Glyphosate is linked to all of these conditions. And you know what? When we look at people who just aren't feeling well, they don't sleep well, they have fatigue, they can't lose weight, well, you should see the research, and I cited it with the article, that's linking glyphosate. As glyphosate has risen, so have these conditions have also risen. So coincidence? Maybe.
I consider myself, in the know with the health and wellness field. I've been interviewing you for years, and that's why I love interviewing you, because I know about glyphosate. As a matter of fact, I'm on a no chemical spray list around my home. They can't spray it, and which is hard to get on, but I put the effort in. But I didn't know this. I know about glyphosate. Yeah, I want to eat organic grains and make sure I don't eat GMO corn and GMO soy, and those are things that I apply in my life. And I avoid glyphosate, as much as possible with organic grains. And to me, I didn't know and I think we're going to get to that a little bit about in the article, but within this video, is that glyphosate isn't just being sprayed to kill weeds next to in the grapevine at the winery in Napa, or it's not just spraying it. I used to spray my garden before I knew this stuff. I'd kill all the weeds before before I put my seed in, or to spray between the rows of whatever you're.
But it's not you being used for that anymore. It's now moved into something called desiccation.
This is huge.
What it is this. It's all about profits. Look, it works. So when farmers get a hold of this, then profits go up, because if they spray the glyphosate on, and by the way, this is happening with most, if not all, non-organic conventional grains. So that means wheat, that means barley, oats. You can go down the list, and of course rice. So what they're doing is they're spraying it on, and it causes a dehydrating effect on the grain, shriveling. Yeah, the chemical, glyphosate, right on. And it shrivels it up, which makes it much easier to harvest, but more importantly, it causes almost a burst of the seed. So it's making it easier to harvest, and it's increasing the harvest. So guess what? Profits go up. But the problem is our levels of glyphosate in our bodies also are going up, because the amount that's in the grain far exceeds the way we used to use glyphosate before. And this process started in about the late 1990s.
So they repurposed this chemical.
Absolutely.
Essentially to cause the grain to sprout out when they combine it.
Yeah. Look, if you
so
think about
corn,
this,
soy, wheat, everything.
Yeah. So this is, look, I've never been a fan of grains, right? Because even whole grains raise glucose up, especially with people who have cellular inflammation, and it drives more inflammation, right? So we've never been a fan. I think most people watching this understand that gluten is a denatured protein. But why doesn't gluten affect everybody? Did you ever ask that question? Well, there's a reason. It affects people who have holes in their gut. We call it leaky gut. And what happens is the gluten can cross over, and then your body's own immune system starts making antibodies to this denatured foreign protein. Okay, that's why gluten's a problem. But again, it's not a problem for everybody. So we should ask ourselves, what's causing the holes in the gut that makes gluten the problem? And that is glyphosate.
Yeah, and I never would have thought of that. You know, I mean, I was always thinking leaky gut, you know, again, from pesticides, herbicides, just non-organic foods, just deteriorating the lining. So maybe what you're saying is glyphosate, you know, sets gluten up.
That's right, for the fall. I'm not a fan of gluten. I mean, it's
yeah.
a denatured protein, you know, and I think it's bad. However, again, when I was sick, I couldn't eat gluten. I can eat gluten now because my gut's closed down. So I think we need to back up and say, what's driving all of these, especially in kids today, all of the leaky gut that we're seeing? You know, and again, it is the glyphosate, but then along with the leaky gut, what are we seeing? We're seeing all the autoimmune. And if you've, you know, those watching this should read my autoimmune article, because it's one of the three-legged stool causes of autoimmune is a leaky gut. So glyphosate is the problem. And there's some other problems.
And I saw the research that it's in your article as the use of glyphosate, which is now, you know, kind of hitting the 100th monkey. You said it started in the 90s, I believe, in the article. It hit that 100th monkey, and diseases are following and trending
right along with glyphosate increase. Yeah, I mean, you should see. I mean, of course, it started in the 90s, but through the Dr. Seneff, she's the leading scientist, a senior scientist at MIT, and she has put out some absolutely amazing research in the last couple of years. Matter of fact, I called her the Researcher of the Year of 2014. She's a hero in my book because she's really brought this to light. Look, she doesn't have a hidden agenda.
Right.
I mean, she's a senior scientist, you know, researching the brain, you know, how certain heavy metals affect this and other neurodegenerative conditions. And, you know, she somehow stumbles upon the fact that glyphosate makes the heavy metal exposures worse, more of a neurotoxin, makes it more of a poison, and that glyphosate's making holes in our gut.
Yeah, if Stephanie was going to write grants, she could easily get a lot more money to fund her research for going with GMOs and going with the use of glyphosate, but she's going against the grain, which isn't typical in a research institution. They want to go where the money trail's at. But some of these higher end, MIT, Harvard, they do, you know, tap it. I mean, they do both, but this is huge.
Well, look, I mean, I've said that GMOs I felt were one of the greatest threats ever to humans, right? Well, I think, you know, I would have to more safely say then all non-organic grains then are really the greatest threat, because one of the problems with the GMO is, of course, it shares DNA with, you know, our cells, cross-kingdom contamination, which is a problem. But we're able to spread. They genetically modify these crops to be able to handle the amount of glyphosate that's needed to kill these weeds. Now, here's the irony of the whole situation. Last time I checked, there was 131 weeds that have become resistant to chemicals like glyphosate. Okay, so what do? Well, if they hit it with a ton more, then it kills the weed, but it also kills the plant. So if you were a company and said, well, let's build a seed, let's engineer a seed that can take higher hits of our chemical glyphosate. Well, that's pretty brilliant, because now you're selling the seed that can take your chemicals. So now you're going to sell 4 to 10 times more chemical because you can spray that amount on it. Oh, and it works. You know, now we can kill more of the weeds. Okay, well, it even gets a little more clever than that. Let's patent it, control the patent. Now we can control the farmers, and we can control the seed. And now we really have profits in business, controlling the chemicals and the seed. Of course. Look, Monsanto has earned the reputation as being the most evil corporation on the planet for this very reason. And we have crusaders like Jeffrey Smith, who we've interviewed in the past, you know, another hero in this, trying to bring this to light, the fact that this is the greatest threat to humans. Look, it's not just now GMO, because I always tell my kids, don't eat GMO, all that glyphosate on there. Well, this is conventional grains. Non-organic conventional grains are being sprayed through this desiccation process, absorbing these chemicals, and then it's putting holes in our gut, driving up all these diseases. Now,
I just had a revelation. So if GMO corn is getting it sprayed for the weeds because it can handle it, then they're spraying it again to desiccate it.
Yeah.
So what are the levels have to be skyrocketing?
Don't make an exception on this stuff. I mean, if you're going to eat grain, if you're healthy enough to eat grain, then please buy organic grain. And we'll talk about some other things I think you can do. But I mean, this is bioaccumulating in our bodies. Now, according to Seneff's work, I'm not going to get into some big science thing here. It disrupts a pathway called a shikimate pathway. I haven't lost you yet, hopefully.
I'm lost.
But okay, shikimate pathway. It's a pathway that your body takes certain amino acids and it makes neurotransmitters, chemicals that make our brain work. Okay, so if this pathway gets disrupted, then we don't make these neurotransmitters and our brain doesn't work right. So I'm making it as simple as I can. Well, look, there's been research that shows that glyphosate disrupts this very, very important pathway. Now, Monsanto is clever. They said, well, humans don't have a shikimate pathway, so therefore all of your research is bunk. Well, the scientists agree that humans do not have a shikimate pathway, but see, here's the problem. Our gut bacteria do, and it's our gut bacteria that take these amino acids and they make them into these brain chemicals, these neurotransmitters. So this is the link of how glyphosate is causing neurodegenerative conditions, memory loss, depression.
Yeah.
Right, because it's disrupting our gut bacteria. It's killing our gut bacteria, creating dysbiosis, a whole nother subject, but it's also killing these neurotransmitters. Now our brain doesn't have enough. Oh, so I've got another great, brilliant plan. Let's give people more chemicals that cause like a serotonin uptake inhibitor, and therefore will boost the levels that way instead of looking upstream and getting to the cause. Do you see this?
It's maddening.
It is, right. So we're giving people more drugs. We're giving people more drugs. We're giving kids more drugs. And listen, I believe, there are so many kids that are on Adderall.
Yeah, we were just talking to
just last night.
People, yeah.
Absolutely.
And these kids
legally, and my son estimated in his school, 50% of the kids are taking Adderall, not prescribed. Now, there's a large percentage prescribed, unfortunately. However, they're taking it for test taking. They're getting it as a street drug. Why? Their brains aren't focusing. They need it. They get addicted to the focus because they don't have it. This is the disturbing part of
and all this
this.
pressure to have good grades as well.
Oh, no doubt about it.
I talked to
and their brains aren't working.
Yeah, one of my friends the other day, his son is also in a private school, and he said because of the pressures that's on those children, 50% of those kids are on Adderall, and that's what he thinks the cause is. He doesn't know the health side, but he says he thinks it's all the pressure in the schools to score high on their tests to get into schools, in these private schools, to make it into schools like MIT and Harvard and all these great schools. So they're on Adderall to create that focus so their test scores are
Well, I'm
higher.
sure that's part of it, but I think the average kid's brain's not working.
This
like
is the reason.
When
This
you
is
and
the
I,
reason,
went to school, we didn't have this. We
Nobody.
didn't have this threat. This is a new threat. Obviously, and here's another thing. When you look at the research that's out there, and I cited so much of it, it disrupts hormones.
Right.
It causes infertility. The link to hormones and other problems is massive. I could go down the list of how it does it, but I think the important thing is a lot of these things that we're seeing today, glyphosate is driving these problems. Even weight gain. We can go through this list of symptoms.
Diabetes in some of the research.
Yeah, diabetes, absolutely. So, glyphosate is driving it, and here's one of the reasons why. It disrupts a pathway called, your liver has different detox pathways.
Right.
So this pathway gets disrupted. And once this detox pathway in the liver gets disrupted, now you start bioaccumulating other toxins, and and the liver starts shutting down. That's why we're looking at people who are a toxic
feedback
world,
loop, yeah.
right, who are bioaccumulating heavy metals, other conditions, and we wonder why so many people can't sleep, can't think, can't function, gaining weight. This chemical glyphosate shuts down one of the major detox pathways in the liver. It's not my opinion. The studies show it. That's why I cited them. This is scary stuff.
This is why you're so passionate about it. Glyphosate, after this recent research that you did, and I keep referring over here because I just glanced through your article on drpompa.com, but the glyphosate has really hit to the top of your list. And it's sad, and that's why we do Cellular Healing TV to bring these latest topics. Again, we're going to probably do a video on that on Cellular Healing TV.
I would love to interview Dr. Seneff. She has earned great respect in my eyes.
Yeah, we'll have her on,
possibly
for sure.
Jeffrey Smith again. I want to keep bringing this message out, and also what people can do about it. I think is important to bring.
So let's go there. Glyphosate has risen to the top of the list. It's given us more of a reason not to eat, which is what I need emotionally. And you need a good reason why to put the bread down, to not buy it and bring it into your home so you continue that sugar addiction, because we know that grains are super sugars,
right,
and they activate and stimulate your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can, this has given us personally more motivation to do that in my family and for my children.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things we can do to avoid and two, remove, glyphosate?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We have to remove it.
Our number one.
From your diet, right? Our number one, remove the source. Now look, can your body take, a hit of glyphosate, every once in a while? Of course. I could make an exception, have some bread every once in a while. I'm healthy enough to do that. Some people aren't. In the exposure your body will deal with. But what's happening to children today? Think about it. For breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's glyphosate, and a little more glyphosate. Now look, we're talking about also the meat. So if a cow eats grain that's desiccated and sprayed, which it is, right?
Especially
Most
corn.
of it's corn, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So you get
corn
the
is
double
like the
hit.
staple for cows.
Absolutely.
Grain.
So it's
corn.
you're bioaccumulating in the meat. Oh, and then all of the grain that they're eating, the crackers, the bread, the cookies. That is what we're talking about here. So if you just shift your family to, if you're going to eat grain, organic grains, you're going to be protected. So this is a more important now than ever, to eat organic. So remove the source that way. But I also believe there's things we need to do in our bodies to keep these detox pathways working so your body gets rid of it. Because once it shuts down, which that's what the chemical does, now we're in deep, deep trouble, because now it's getting into the cell, disrupting the DNA. It's causing the holes in the gut because we can't get rid of it fast enough. And now autoimmune and all these conditions we're talking about start happening.
Yeah, removing the source and the cause is key, and that's what makes you different, Dr. Pompa. That's why I'm with you so often, just because
Right.
your philosophy is so true, and we're seeing so many great testimonies through our physician network, that we've been able to build over the years. So let's get to now the glyphosate's in the cell, or it's circulating in the bloodstream,
in
it's
the body.
in the fats.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
can we
So
do?
you already have leaky gut.
Yeah.
You're already not sleeping. Your hormones are dysregulated. You're wondering why. What do I do now? Yeah. Remove the source. But let's talk about this, because I'm very passionate about the way we do detox, because it's real. I'm a critic of so much of the detoxification that's on the market, right?
Yeah. So when you hear this, you're like, I want to detox glyphosate from my body. So you run to Whole Foods.
Get a colon cleanse.
Worse.
The 7-day cleanse, right?
Yeah, worse yet, Costco, and get a colon cleanse or a liver detox.
Well, arguably, it might be adding more toxins, right?
Arguably. So that's not what we want you to do. We want you to, truly address with real solutions these causes. So don't run out and just go do a foot bath, or run out and, buy an far infrared sauna. Although that's, out of all the things we just talked about,
good.
probably
It's good. It opens up detox pathways, but it's only one detox pathway, the skin.
But we have this neat, system that you've developed over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah,
It's been tested
it's
through all of our
advanced.
physicians, and we want to pound that home this year, because it
We
really
do.
does work.
Well, look, you've heard me, most of you watching this have heard me say, true detoxification has to happen at the cellular level. That's where it starts. Right. That's where the toxins are accumulating in and around the cell, disrupting the DNA, triggering all your bad genetics that you got from mom and dad. But we want to get the toxins moving from the cell, okay, which is where my 5 R's really takes place, right? That's the magic. It's not just one thing. We have to fix that cell. It will start moving the toxins from the cell. They make their way mostly to the liver, which is very important, because the liver has to process it. Oh, and if you're eating a lot of glyphosate, it has trouble doing that. So oftentimes we have to really work with that liver, and we want to move it from the liver, and most of it binds up to the bile in the liver.
Which is a fatty digestive aid.
Absolutely, and it binds up into the fat, right? So then when you go to eat fat, it releases the bile in the intestine, but it brings the toxins with it because it's holding on to it. And it would be wonderful if you just released it from there. But the problem is your body reabsorbs the bile back to the liver. It conserves it, recycles it. So what goes with the bile are the toxins that originally got onto it in the liver, and it reabsorbs it. It's called auto-intoxication. So when people do these liver cleanses and all these different things, they're auto-intoxicating. So the system that you were part of developing as well is over the years is moving the toxins out of the cell, true cellular detox with a lot of the things that we've learned, in moving it into the bile complex, catching it in the gut so you don't reabsorb it. Now, I'm going to caution, if you have severe challenges, we utilize different specific chelators, and some of you will need to work with a healthcare practitioner that understands this process very well.
Right.
If you're just a general person looking to make your health better, utilize the process, watch our videos. We have products that can help you do that. Even a new product we'll talk a little bit about. But some of you are very challenged. You need to utilize specific chelators, whether it's heavy metals, biotoxins, and you need to use them correctly. And there's other things that, I always call the pitfalls.
Yeah.
So there's different pitfalls that you have a practitioner walk you through. But anyway, so we have trained at least 60 doctors around the country. And you can,
yeah.
Absolutely. So we could definitely help you find one of those that are trained. But anyway, so this process has evolved. And utilizing this process is really true cellular detox. This is real, it works. Moving it from the cell out of the body so you don't reabsorb it, auto-intoxicate. And I think some of the people watching, they've heard of coffee enemas and different things.
Right.
And what that does, and it could be part of this, is just to help things move out. But what it does is that helps that bile escape the liver.
Right.
And then, but again, if you do a coffee enema, and that's the point I want to make, if you do a coffee enema without a catcher's mitt in the gut,
Right.
then you run the risk of auto-intoxicating.
So we got to have that catcher's mitt. In the ingredients, in one of the products we developed with Dr. Shane Morris is the bind product.
Yeah, the bind
and its
is
ingredients
evolved.
are in there that specifically are shown to bind the bile, and actually the type of carbon specifically in there should have been shown in research to lower cholesterol. So that was one of the research papers when we found this, and that was how it was doing.
Yeah, because it binds that bile complex which
is
contains
loaded with fats and cholesterol. Pretty cool. So you have to do if you do a coffee enema, and that really was in vogue, especially 5-10 years ago. Everybody was doing coffee.
Well, we have
coffee
simpler
enemas.
ways now. There's even suppositories we can do to push that liver out. Yeah.
But, so that's one of the products, and then we have the G cell, which has the ingredients that raise
it's
intracellular
the cell,
yeah,
right? Raises the intracellular glutathione,
glutathione,
which that helps remove the toxin
bring
from
it
the cell.
into the liver. Then if you would do something like the coffee enema, that would dump it, and you'd have the bind there to catch it. And
Pretty amazing system when you think about it.
And one of the things, with this new product we've been using through our accredited doctor network, through our docs, is the cellular detox drops. So, one of the things I was going to ask you, Dr. Pompa, and I don't know the answer to this. This is kind of an impromptu question. When that bile gets reabsorbed with the toxins, without the catcher mitt, so it goes back up, does it get into the bloodstream and does it circulate those
Eventually,
toxins?
yeah, because it makes its way back to the liver, and then much of it ends up in the bloodstream. And that's actually the greatest problem, because once it does, now it can start crossing back into cells, triggering new DNA, and also even crossing the blood-brain barrier. So it will drive autoimmune. It will drive other problems. So
So one of your other articles, detox is dangerous.
Yeah,
and that would be a reason. You would do even a liver cleanser, chlorella, or the metal magnet or whatever, and it just kind of stirs up those toxins.
Absolutely.
And then it creates more of a mess. So detox can be very dangerous. That's why
read that article.
If you're
when
sick,
detox is dangerous.
we don't just say that just to say it.
Right.
We're on this mission to make sure that you work with somebody so it doesn't, cause problems, because you just can't pop a pill to, on either side to, make yourself well. It is a process.
Well, a lot of those agents people take, they don't work.
Yeah.
That's hopefully the best that happens, but some of them stir the bee's nest and cause that redistribution. It's not a true chelator. It doesn't work. The cellular detox drops is new.
Yeah.
And you know a lot about this subject because this was your area, but it's a chelator, and it works differently than a lot of the other true chelators that we've discussed in the past. It uses a cage. And it is a liquid zeolite that someone brought to us years ago that never worked because they couldn't get the molecules small enough even to cross the gut. Well, this is a patented process. They hydrolyzed the zeolite.
Yep.
And it's a type of zeolite that you know very much about.
Yeah, I have a geology background, a master's degree in toxicology and chemistry, and a lot of my research was on the binding of toxins in the environment, in the industry. There's lots of hazardous waste being created, so what they'll do is they'll dump a bunch of zeolite into the water treatment plant.
It cleans up the environment,
It completely will clean it. So it would be great if we could dump it into us and do the same thing. So you take it orally and it just goes into your gut and maybe bind up a few toxins in your gut, but scratched a crud out of your small and large
Right.
intestine and actually can cause problems. So don't do that, in my opinion. I don't think that's a good solution.
Yeah.
And then this new product that was brought to us years ago didn't work because it was just suspended zeolite fragments.
Right.
But what this
Still too big.
brilliant doctor, PharmMD, did is he designed a patented process to hydrolyze the clinoptilolite,
Clinoptilolite.
yeah, clinoptilolite fragments. So essentially hydrolyze these zeolite fragments to break them up and still maintain that chemical cage structure, but broke them down into these little fragments. So there's different variations of size, but a lot of those sizes, I don't know how many nanograms they are, or nanometers, or whatever those little small pieces are measured in, can now cross into the cell and even some of those fragments into the blood-brain barrier.
Which is huge.
Which is where you want to remove the toxins, hypothalamus, pituitary. So again, we're going to be talking a lot about that process because we believe that it has the potential to make a massive difference in removing the cause so the body can.
Yeah,
heal
absolutely.
itself.
And again, if you utilized an agent like that, right?
Right.
The hydrolyzed clinoptilolite, liquid zeolite. If you use in cellular detox drops, that's why we call it that, right? It's easier. But if you utilized it without raising glutathione, without binding it in the gut, again, the effectiveness would not be there.
Right.
So it is really through this system and combining these types of true chelators, and that's only sold through practitioners, by the way, that really works. That's what I call true cellular detox. Let's bring it all the way back because, here we are, the whole subject of get rid of the glyphosate in your diet. Eat only organic grains if you're going to eat grains. Make no exceptions. Stay away from GMOs. It contains 4 to 10 times the amount of this nasty chemical.
Yeah, read the articles.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, true detoxification. If you feel like you've already been compromised, is going to be ultimately the answer. So these things. As this new year here is very important that you pay attention to this poison. It's way more important than the gluten topic. And it's flown under the radar, and that's what really has inspired me to bring this message to the public.
Thank you, Dr. Pompa. Glyphosate, top of the list of causing massive dangers and a massive health impact on the world. You heard it here on drpompa.com. Thanks for watching again. Share this with your friends. See you in the next article.